There's a lot of thank yous here that we need to do, and first of all, we'd like to thank the Piscataway Nation peoples here for having us on their land and original territories. We're very appreciative of that. We'd also like to thank Bennett and Ali for their excellent work over these, I guess, been on a 2-year venture. And also, of course, the University of St. Andrews and William and Mary. And I think we, Steve and myself, would really like to express our thank you to Ross John and his wife, Holly. Ross has stepped forward. This has been a 6-year process for this film. We never asked for donations. I financed this, most of it, on my own, and we didn't want to have anybody control the content of this film. So it's taken a long time, and so thanks to Ross, he was able to help us with the legal end of the film. All the legal areas are completed by attorneys, and for other areas for distribution and for the film to be copied, things like that. Thank you so much, Ross.
Shake your hand. Nothing, I just want to say that it was obvious when we first got a look at it and start talking that it needed to be brought into publication. So it was my honor, and you know, I got to give credit to my wife because she holds all the resources in my domain. So when she said go for it, we went for it. So, but I think it's a very important document, and it lays things out so you understand it. And then so the topics, we start talking about it differently when we know what we see. You know, and it goes back to what we've all done here. So I don't want to take any credit for it again. These are the gentlemen that put their heart, soul, and a lot of time, you know, into this. So I'm honored.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. I mentioned earlier about 38 plus 2 productions, and my grandfather medicine bottle, who you've seen in the film, hung along with Chief Little Six. This year is the 150th year of their hanging in Minnesota, November 11th, 1865. So I'm in the process to get their, what happened after the hanging was they took the bodies from the front of the fort where they were hung. They took them into the dead house, and they put rocks in their coffins, and then the military took the coffins out to the graveyard next to the fort where there was thousands of Minnesota people watching. Pretended their bodies were in the grave. They had their formal military process, and they buried the bodies, covered them up. That evening, 2 doctors from Minneapolis, St. Paul, come and got their bodies, took them to the town, and they chloroformed them, wrapped them up, and sent them to Philadelphia at the Thomas Jefferson College of Medicine to be dissected. For the past 3 years, I've been trying to get their bones repatriated from Thomas Jefferson College of Medicine. Of course, they're not helping me because I don't, you know, they're trying to put me off the same process. Ironically, Steve has arranged for us to go to Philadelphia to show the film this Sunday at Temple University. U.S. Social Forum at Temple University. So we're going to begin the process of trying to awake the consciousness of the Philadelphia people and the Thomas Jefferson College of Medicine to repatriate my grandfather and our other chief back home. So these are, yesterday and today we talked about what we have to face. And it continues, it's there. One of the things I always wondered about, why isn't the truth in history put in our history books in colleges and high schools? Ironically, I coming flying up here the other day, there was an article in the Minneapolis paper concerning the killings of our relatives, of our black people in South Carolina. And in the article, this gentleman, I have the paper here, he wrote several books. And he said it was because the educational establishment of this country some 30 years ago stopped teaching about the real historical facts of history. They changed it to critical thinking and lifelong learning. Thereby, it gave them a protective shield, and it was the failure of this. What the failure was is that it eliminated the teachings of the truth in history, like you just seen, and stopped our children. We're talking about our sacred children. All of our sacred children, no matter what color they are. It prevented them from learning the truth. And as a result, according to the article, this man in South Carolina, because he was denied the truth in history, he only went by a cross of the Southern Cross of the flag, that mentality. Because he was denied the truth in history by our educational system, according to the article. And this man is totally right. And so what we are going to try to do with this film is to break this down into chapters. We're asking our Indigenous professors and teachers to help us and others to do our own history book. And we'll write our own story, break each chapter down in this film and include others to put out our own history book to be included in this educational system in this country. So no more South Carolinas can happen again, and no more 500 years of history of what happened to our people can ever happen again, because our children's going to know the truth. They're only going to have a better spirit and understanding if they are told the truth. That's healthy mind, healthy spirit, heart. My grandfather, before he was hung, medicine bottle, he said, someday, he said, I'm a Mdewakanton. I'm a common human being. And he said, someday, the people will come from the heart and look at each other as Mdewakanton, common human beings. And when they do that, come from the heart, this country is going to be a good place. Because we're looking at each other from the heart as common human beings. Then he was hung. The courage of our ancestors is beautiful. When we think about the integrity of our very first understanding and teachings from the Creator to our spiritual leaders, men and women, from the beginning, how beautiful that is. That's the integrity that our ancestors kept within us this very moment of this very day. That beautiful knowledge through our ceremonies. That's been trying to take away for 500 years that connection. but the power of our belief system in that beautiful way of life, love, respect, the 7 laws Virgil talked about, the connection of earth and that spirit, star nation, that beautiful connection is why we're here today. That's why they died. But they didn't die in vain. They didn't die. They kept this strong for us today. This beautiful way. That's dignity. That's what our ceremonies are about. That prayer is beautiful. A relative talked the other day, comes from right here to earth. That's where we're from. Yes, we're a part of the entire womb, as our relative said. How beautiful is that? That's us. That's our heart, as my grandfather says. And as Chris Leith, our relative, my companion Pam's grandfather, says, when you pray, don't pray from the mind, pray from the heart. What a beautiful saying. He's gone now, but I always remember that. That is what's lacking in this understanding of what happened for 500 years to our peoples. So when we come to the understanding of the political element of Washington and the Senate and the House and all the whole process, executive, and you put separation of a church and state, and okay, church, you did your duty. Columbus and the papal bulls and the Pope. Okay, now we face this terror and all this in Europe. Now we're going to start a new place. Well, you can have your land and everything because you're bringing about the moral authority of what we stand for, and you're separated now. Let us do as a political element, we'll do the dirty work. We'll write the laws that will say Native American people are heathen savages, thereby justifying the means to taking the land. Wow. So, there we have it. And it continues. We need to educate the people like films like this. This is the beginning of educating the people for all of our children's sake. It's about our children, the most sacred. And listening to this morning, the stories. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And when I came back from that war, I had PTSD and I didn't know it. Because my son was a year old when I went over there, and my daughter was born when I went over there. When I come back, I didn't want to get close to my children because if they died, then it would be my fault. Man. That's how guilty I was. I didn't understand. So when our sisters talked today, this morning, I'm thinking, wow, man. She grew up in a situation where she felt guilty. She didn't have that connection of leaving the families and leaving when you're little to boarding schools. Wow. I'm the youngest of 8 in my family. I was fortunate to have a good family and good parents. And when I thought about the Vietnam connection today, of how I felt guilty, once I felt that about my children, and I'm back from war, and then years later, after going through this PTSD, then I find out, I feel so bad. I felt bad because I didn't want to be around my children because they might die. Another form that our people have to go through. That's just compiling what generational trauma is about. So I was fortunate to be an artist when I was little, and I went to art school, and I went and became a visual artist, and then eventually a performing artist. As an artist, I was very fortunate in doing that. I didn't know what my journey was, but I knew what I loved. So I was put in that path by the Creator, not knowing what the end result is later on in my life like I am today. I'm very lucky to have that. How do I use the war and my feelings and my guilt? I have to turn around that into a positive way to tell the truth. It's all about truth telling. And why did I become an actor? Because I studied it seriously and I read in there, it says, in order for you to be a good actor, you have to come from the heart and believe and express yourself as a performing artist to truth telling. And then I said, okay, I can respect acting because it's about truth telling. I'm an artist. My people are storytellers. I'm going to be an actor because my people are storytellers. I'm going to be an artist that way because it's about truth in myself. I'm going to develop that character and bring that character to life because I experienced that. And when I did stage, that's what I felt. You go into a whole different world. Just when I also work in stone as a stone sculptor. That's what I connect with that sacred stone. Smudge it and get into that spiritual place. Beautiful. So yeah, that's my journey. And it led me to utilize the hurt in Vietnam War, utilize the hurt from our generational trauma into some type of positive way of understanding. What is that? We go back to the original source of our spiritual understanding that our ancestors kept for us right here. That's our power. And we use that love from that, to be positive and strong and go in the future and help our children. It's about our children. So that's a part of me being a part of this. It's not me. It's Steve. It's others that helped along this. We're all in this together. All for 500 years, all of our nations were in this together. It's the beginning of educating of this country and the world. It's a little part, but it's the start. So where this goes from now on, at least we have a part of this. And all the beautiful people I met in my life and journey led me and helped me to help and do whatever I can to get this done, along with Stephen and Virgil Killstraight and Dr. Luis Rivera. All of these are put in our path in a good way when we come from the heart. That's about all of us, that energy, that goodness. The dignity of our ancestors, we are carrying them every second of every day. Thank you to our relatives. With that, I'd like to ask Steve to say a few words, please.
Well, I wanted to pay my respects to Virgil, and I'm so saddened that he's not able to be here today. And he's been such a great friend and mentor all these many years now, since he first took me under his wing in 1992. And he said something after we first met that was very profound to me. He said, they cut you off from your heart, stick you in your head, and manipulate you out of a book. And I thought, wow, that's a formula. But I just want to, I'm not going to say much here, but I want to thank Sheldon publicly and acknowledge Dr. Luis Rivera Pagan, a very amazing man, as you can tell from the little pieces you see in the film. And the thing is that the system that we're talking about is ongoing. It's not like, well, you know, that ended at some point and now we're moving on. How do we get to the deeper level of analysis and understanding and insight about what it is we're actually dealing with? And I think that's our effort here. Obviously, this is just one way of showing this kind of patterning. And there are many other ways, and there are many other people that have put very important work out there that's not included in the film. But I think this film, the way I see it, is the start of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. And so what are we going to do to have that conversation together to sort through what we have been through, not just our nations and peoples, but nations and peoples throughout the planet? And what are the domination and dehumanization patterns that are existing on the planet that need to be ended? And how do we go about doing that? That's a tall order. You know, that building over there called the U.S. Capitol was built with slave labor. But they never talk about that. I mean, they want to take down that Confederate flag because it's this horrible symbol. Well, why isn't that horrible symbol built with slave labor? So there's these mythologies that get entrenched that don't get adequately dealt with. And I hope that this and envision this film and and the conversation that we're going to have together globally as being transformational, and understanding that we have original knowledge and wisdom systems that serve as templates for a healing and transformative way of life that our ancestors lived out since the beginning of time. So I think with that, I know we're short on time, so I'll move on to the question and answer session. Thank you.
Hello.
Or comment.
Sheldon, I don't know where you're at in the stage of I know you said this is the release, but it's profoundly stunning what you have to say about your grandfather and what he said. And it belongs somewhere there. I mean, that's a first. I'm still just sitting here shaking. It's the first time I've ever seen that hanging. And I teach that. I've taught that hanging. I've taught my students that hanging ever since I left. I started teaching in university for the past 10 years. And I've never seen that video clip. And I have 2 children. I mean, it just... So, as I decide to embark upon showing something like this, the people need to know what your grandfather was saying. What was his knowledge? Because it's stunningly profound. You know, I want my Sioux Penobscot children, you know, to know what your grandfather said. You know, it just is, because that's part of our survival and also part of our thriving. You know, we have a need to thrive, not just survive. We're barely surviving, but it's a human right to thrive as well. So, you know, Stephen, thank you for your significant scholarly contributions. This is, you know, I can certainly make a commitment that I will show the film. And I hope that when I do, there's a way for me to engage with the knowledge that you shared, Sheldon, about your late grandfather and what he shared with you in that teaching. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to put an idea out there. This is something I've used in trying to teach people about, the structure of domination, and it has to do with heaven, where we go when we die, the idea of heaven in, different cultural frameworks. The European idea of heaven is it's like a castle, this structure that, in the world we live in, would have had to have been built by slaves. It's operated by, hundreds of servants, and people aspire to live in this castle. It has jewels and gold, but I was raised, where we go is this, is a whole other kind of place where it's beautiful and natural. It's a wonderful camp. And, I think people, that's how deep this structure of domination is, where they actually aspire to be, forever in a castle, you see, instead of like living in harmony with creation. That's just an idea, and I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Ariga, in our language, that's something, it has many different meanings, but one of them is what you've done here is something extraordinary, something beautiful, something powerful. And the message about expressing the truth is, I think, one of urgency. It's an urgent message that, for us to put in place the accurate history from an Indigenous perspective, and for each of our nations to develop that accurate history is a matter of urgency. I mean, we know about our languages and how tenuous the conditions are for many people, not just here in North America, but across the globe. And I think that one of the significant messages of this important work is that the doctrine spread far and wide. And for those areas where Indigenous peoples have become extinct, are no longer with us, there are many more that are in that really delicate circumstance. Tomorrow may be their last. So I think I don't know, and you probably both know better about how to saturate the airwaves with this message, but also the encouragement to others to shed light on their work and to bring forward the accurate histories in order to affect change for tomorrow, and especially those for those nations that, it really is a matter of survival and a matter of urgency. But I just want to thank you both, and hopefully in our communities in the Arctic, in the North, that they'll have an opportunity to view this film as well as your future work. I think that what our sister has said about your grandfather, and this is maybe the start of another film that delves much deeper into the accurate portrayal of your history and the history of your people and your grandfather. But again, thank you.
In response to our sister's question, when I read Stephen's book in 2008 after it came out, what hit me the most about that is the Christian element of this. Because with my understanding of my grandfather and the war and what happened to through the hanging and the deaths, it took me right back. This is the cause. I'm going, my God, I got to find Stephen Newcomb. So I found him in California. I flew out there and I said, Steve, I read your book. Would you be interested in working with me on a film to do this story? And we agreed 6 years ago. And so my grandfather was a medicine man, ironically. What he had to choose, in our way, if you're going to go to war, you put your sacred bundle away. That's your choice. That's what he did. That bundle's still in Canada where he left it before he was captured. So we're trying to get that back. But what I want to say is that being a spiritual man, he understood that through our ceremonies, the Creator, when you in your ceremonies and the Creator, you ask him through prayer. He understood that. This is my direction, and I ask him for your help. He had to follow that prayer. Creator, no, okay, you want that? Then I'll help you. So when you follow that understanding, for like our old people have done it from the beginning, then they know the Creator is watching you, and you better, like they always say, be careful of what you pray for. That's an example, because you carry that prayer. So when you make that connection of his choice at that time to say, I've had enough, you know. Ironically, his daughter, my grandmother, after the war, during the war and after the war, she helped save white people's lives by hiding in the teepee. And her father went to war. So what does that say? So our spiritual understanding through that ceremony is sacred to the medicine man and our people. He made a choice. They wanted to make an example in 1865. The last 2 Dakotas are now hung. They're gone. And one was a spiritual leader. So you know, how do we make sense out of that, all of that, as a family member? How can I tell, what is that, what is it? Stephen's book is a start. That gave me this, this is the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life. Because when you research, you read, you feel the emotions. As an actor, you have to open up your heart and feel that. You have to be able to smell it, taste it, hear it, everything. You have the courage to bring that into you and use it to bring that character to life. That's truth. So when I go through this history and read Stephen and feel my grandfather's parent, how did I survive out of that? I had to go to ceremonies, Lenape ceremonies all the time to keep my sanity and my strength going. That's how we relieve that, to get through this. It hurt that much. That's why it was so hard. But ultimate thing is always our children. That what's going to be, what's best for our children. That's where it's at. So our grandfather says, if you come from the heart as common human beings, this place is going to be a good place. He's saying that for our children. Let's express that to our children. That's the strength and the goodness of his understanding through our ceremonies. That's the spirit of the Creator, that love and respect for our 7 generations as we believe in our way, Dakota way. We have to protect our children 7 generations ahead. So it's spiritually all interconnected. And so when we look at our relatives in South America and Mexico and on up, all of our people believe this way. How beautiful is that? You know, so then when we come to the 500 years of this element, you know, the papal bulls and brought about this whole system, and then of course the European influence, the Christianity part all together. Wow, man, that just blew me away when I read Steve's book. Ooh, this is the answer. So I wanted to say that about, try to explain how medicine bottle, as close as I can, to understand that this is his strength. You know, it's not just his, all our people strength. That's within all of us. That goodness, you know, that goodness, that connection. I am doing a documentary, it's like 80% done, on our creation story, which will explain my grandfather's understanding.
Several
Suzanne.
quick things. When do you go to Philadelphia?
Sunday. Well, tomorrow.
I have very good friends at the University of Pennsylvania Museum, which is the leading archaeology museum in the world, maybe in the world, in the United States. Let's just limit it. And they're very they're really in the leadership in museum repatriations. So they're right there in Philadelphia. And one of my friends, so one friend is Lucy Fowler Williams, who is the keeper of the North American collection. And so she's one person. The other is Richard Leventhal, who's also, in addition to being a professor there, and the former director of the museum, is the director of the Cultural Heritage Center, the Penn Cultural Heritage Center. And both of them can really help you to repatriate your ancestor. So I will give you their telephone numbers and email, do an email introduction, and I really encourage you to be in touch with them, if not on this trip, but maybe just do it quickly on the fly on this trip and see if they can help you. And also they would probably be very interested going through the Cultural Heritage Center and showing this, and could assemble something relatively quickly and have done so in the past. So that's one thing. Another thing is, as you distribute this, I think it would be wonderful to include a list and indicate that it's an ongoing list, a developing list of all of those churches that have renounced the doctrine to date. And just so people know it's not hopeless and you're not starting from zero and look, this has happened and let's build on this. Here's a foundation to build on. Another thing is, how old is your son, Dakota?
He's 38 now.
38. Oh my God, I remember him as, well, I am old. So, wonderful music, and I love what he did. He did the same thing with The Coming of the Ship that Spielberg did with Jaws. It just with, I guess it was Paul Williams, with just the two notes. Dun dun, but it was the dun dun, but different notes than Jaws. But it was wonderful. I thought, okay, thank you.
Can I just thank Sheldon both for his words and for the honour of the premiere of that movie, and Steve as well.